well as startup entrepreneurs and venture capitalists who are looking to play in the innovation ecosystem in Indonesia.
This is very exciting. I really love to see a lot of people gathering and the thirst of how to break barriers in growing innovation inside the company. Really, really exciting.
Thank you. Thanks for doing all the exercises, okay. Can we switch to our slides, my slides? So this was the first question you asked at the press conference, right? How can large corporates innovate like startup? And that's what I'm going to talk about. But before I do that, let us address the gorilla in the room. Do you know who this gorilla is? Oh, let me give you a hint. He's huge, he's slow, and he's very stubborn.
So you're talking about us, right?
Yes, these are the corporates, the large corporates, the gorilla of our corporate, right? And the question I would like to answer is, can we make him dance? Right? Can we make him dance like the smaller monkeys who jump from one branch to other branch, finding fruit, which are like the startups, right? So let's see if we can find the answer by the end of this talk. But everything needs to start with why. So why is it important to make this gorilla dance? It's not all well in the paradise, right? You can see the storm clouds looming over the horizon. We live in a world that's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I'm not sure if you heard this term VUCA. This is pretty common term now in the boardrooms. They say we live in a VUCA world. And by this, what we're trying to say is your competitors, maybe in your industry, they may not be in your industry at all. You can be attacked from any side by anyone, no matter how big it is. It's not the survival of the fittest, it's the survival of the fastest, the one who can move very fast, right? Yesterday, I was having a conversation with Peter, and he was talking about this guys from Toto, the guys who make toilets, and the guys who are trying to create human genome sequencing and phenome sequencing. Basically, it's to analyze the poo to see what kind of disease you might have. So their biggest competition might not even come from like Kohler. It may come from a small startup somewhere, maybe in Japan, not even in Japan, maybe in Indonesia, who is creating technologies to find potential disease you might have from your analyzing your poo. So in a world like this, you cannot go to your R&D labs or the so-called innovation centers to show you how to innovate or where to go, how to navigate this time. What you really need is to be entrepreneurial. That's because by definition, entrepreneurship is creating products and services under conditions of extreme uncertainty. That's the definition of entrepreneurship. And these are the exact kind of conditions that exist today in our world. It's like, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And if you'd like to know more about entrepreneurship and what this lean startup is, you can look up Eric Ries. He's a pretty cool resource on that. So, all right, we know that we need to be entrepreneurial. So where do big corporations find entrepreneurs? And if you look today, or historically, there are two ways that corporates have found entrepreneurs. They would either make an acquisition of a startup. That's how they would get entrepreneurs into their organizations. And second is they would partner with the startup to solve a certain challenge at a given time. But both this approach has the downside. Whenever you acquire a startup, the integration of that startup into the corporate, the bigger, is not always smooth. And in my experience at, let's say, Intel in the last 6 years, I have not seen any good integration of a startup that we acquired. A lot of times the founders will leave after their 2 years period is over, and they always fight with the bigger culture of the company. Partnering with the startups is like solving challenges after they've occurred, right? So you find a gap, you go and you work with the startup to solve that challenge. But there's a third way of finding entrepreneurs, and that's to look inside and find the entrepreneurs within your organization. And I think you guys are doing it at Amoeba, right? And these entrepreneurs are called intrapreneurs. They are just regular employees of a large organization who employ startup-like practices to create cool new innovations. And intrapreneurship is not a new concept. It's a very, very old concept. As early as the 1970s, right, Art Fry, he created the Post-it notes. And I presented this slide last year as well. It's a quick recap. How many of you guys were here last year? Okay, a few. Okay, that's good. It's good. Good that, all new faces. So Art Fry created this Post-it notes by using a policy at 3M called permitted bootlegging, where employees were allowed 15% of time and resources to work on things they believed mattered. It was not top-down. It was like bottoms-up. Whatever they felt was right for the company. People think that Steve Jobs was the one who created Macintosh, but it was not. It was this guy, Jeff Raskin, who used to write product manuals. And as he was writing those product manuals, he noticed that the products are getting more and more complex with the new generation. And he thought that personal computers should be very easy to use, not too complex, not too open, very closed, so that users cannot screw around with them. So he went ahead and he hired a bunch of people. He created his idea of what a personal computer should be, and that became Macintosh. And Ken Kutaragi of Sony, he almost lost his job while bringing his vision of PlayStation to life. So let me ask you this question, and I asked this question last year as well. How many of you here have heard of either any one of these guys? Exactly, right? Nobody knows about them, although these guys have created some of the most game-changing products in their industries. PlayStation is the world's most successful gaming console. You cannot imagine an office without Post-it notes. And Macintosh is what actually created personal computers. And this all came from intrapreneurs. No one knows about them. Right? We know about what Steve Jobs did. We know about Elon Musk, Jack Ma. But no one knows these guys. They are the real unsung heroes. So 3 years ago, I wanted to change this, right? So 3 years ago, I co-founded Ideas to Reality. It's like Amoeba with an Intel, where we enable and empower our employees to bring their ideas to reality. And I'll tell you how we are doing this, but before that, I'll show you some of the stuff they're working on, right? They're working on things like smart home assistants, robots, drones, smart surveillance, IoT, software, you name it, and we have a project in those different areas. And these are all created by our employees. And let me show you I'll show you 3 examples. This is called 3D reconstruction. Imagine taking a drone and flying it over a city block, and this drone has a camera. It captures a video of the city as it flies. We download that video and run it through our software, and what it does is it turns that video into a 3D model. So what you see here is not actual video. It's a 3D model of the city created by simply flying a drone and running the footage through the software that our guy created. Imagine taking your phone and going around an object. This speaker, you can simply take a video of the speaker and upload it to the cloud service, go get a coffee, and a 3D model of that object is ready for you to be downloaded. So imagine what you can do with this, right? Today, if you look at video games, people are creating cities from scratch, like hundreds of people sitting in offices on CAD, looking at pictures of a city and creating it from the scratch. Now, all you need to do is fly a drone, take the footage down, and you have a city block, right? And if you're able to capture simple videos of objects, you can actually recreate the entire world in 3D, and think of the number of applications for that. This is augmented reality pool, and this is a guy called Joey. He really loves to play pool. But the problem with playing pool is that you need a partner. You can't play by yourself. So he wanted to fix this. He took a camera, a projector, and added some intelligence, and now he can play against the table. The table can talk to him by projecting images onto the table. It can tell him what ball to hit. It can even challenge him. Give me a second. It can say, it can do it. Now he's saying, okay, put the ball into the pocket and get the cube into the target area, and you can get more points. So what this does is it takes a game that is traditional, has not changed in many, many decades, and makes it more interactive, more fun, and gets more people to play, practice, and do it in a real environment. It's not a video game. You're playing against the pool table in the real environment. And this is the last example I'm going to show to you. How many of you like shopping here? So some of the guys are hesitant to raise their hands. But how many times you come home with both your hands full and try to then reach out for the keys in your pocket, right? So what if you could just use your face to open the door? But the problem is that it has to be very high level of security, because you don't want someone to even take a picture of your face and open the door, or even create a fake 3D mask of you, right? It has to be super accurate to let only you in, and no one else cannot be fooled. So this guy created this. We have this thing called RealSense. It's a three-dimensional camera. And all you need to do is just step in front of the door. It recognizes you. You cannot fool it, because it's a depth camera. It has the contours of your face. It can also tell if you are a real person or you're a 3D printed face, because it can detect liveness, that it's a real person, living person. It's breathing and the blood is flowing through your veins. Now, what I've shown you are really cool demos, right? A demo doesn't make a product. How many of you guys can identify this building? It's MIT's Media Lab. It's one of the premier research institutes that comes up with futuristic technologies. Like e-ink came from there. Lego Mindstorm came from there. One laptop per child. It's a project to create affordable computers for emerging economies, came from there. And they used to have this slogan for a long time. They used to say, demo or die, right? And they've been going with this demo or die for a long, long time. However, we have to change the slogan, deploy or die. If the real innovations, right, need to be deployed to people, it's not an innovation if you're not able to create value to people who are, in turn, willing to pay for what you've created. Demos don't work. Demo is, people can see it, people can, feel good, but in the end, innovation, real innovation happens when you can bring in the revenues for your company. So how do we turn all those demos I showed to you into real products, businesses, money? Typically, in a corporate setting, it's like launching a rocket. Okay, so by that, what I mean, you will research and research for a long time about what you want to build. Then you will spend a lot of time planning how to build it. Then you spend a few more months executing that plan to perfection, and out comes a beautiful product. And then you hoist it to the market. You launch it towards a target. But 85% of the time, this approach fails. There's a study by Harvard Business Review that shows 85% of the time, a product launch in this way fails. So it's like trillions of dollars down the drain. How do you fix this? Right? And this is where we looked at the startups. You know, Indra one talked about what can we learn from the startups. So that's where I started looking at how are startups able to do it. Startups have no resources. They don't have lots of money to bomb. They don't want to make 100 products hoping that 15 of them will be successful. They have one product and they have to make that product or idea successful. So we came up with this lean startup approach. And if it's launching products the corporate way is like launching a rocket, lean startup is like driving a car. So what you do is you see a target and you drive towards that target. And as you drive, you constantly correct your steering wheel, right? If the target moves, you move your steering wheel. If there is an obstacle in the road, you steer. If the target, you decide or we figure out that that's not the right target to hit, you get off the road, take a U-turn and come back. That's lean startup. But how do you do this? How do you actually do this? What is lean startup? Have you guys heard of MVP, minimum viable product, right? Maybe a couple hands go up. So minimum viable product is a very early representation of your product. It may not even be a product. It may just be like a PowerPoint presentation. It could be just a video of what you have in mind and what problem it's trying to solve. And with that, you go to your customers, measure their reactions to it, or try to basically validate whether what you're building actually solves their problems or not. Or what problem do they have? Because in your mind, you have a lot of problems that your product can solve, but it may not be the truth. So basically, lean startup is to not create the entire product, create a representation of product, go to the market, go to the customers, measure, get research from that, learn from it, tweak your idea, build another MVP, go test it. So basically, all you do is you build, measure, and learn. And you go into this loop until you know that you are creating a product that's fit for the market. So there's this term called product market fit. That's when there's so much demand for what you're creating that you can't keep up with the demand. And that's when you know that that's the right product to make. But how do you do that in a corporate environment? They're used to following their own approach of planning, like research, planning, execution, launch, right? So what we did was we created our own MVP. And we called it Startup X. The Startup X is our accelerator where we bring 5 to 7 projects out of our corporate environment, and we run them through 16 weeks of acceleration program, where we give them the skills needed, because lean startup is a concept, but it's a very structured approach, like business model. How do you create a business model? How do you validate the hypothesis you have? What are the key hypotheses that need to be validated in order to move forward? How do you build an MVP? How do you create financial model for your business? How do you sell your idea? How do you pitch your idea? And it's important to give them the skills because, at least for us, they are highly technical people, and I think it's the same for telecom Indonesia as well, right? You were mentioning you have lots of technical people that you hire. Intel is a technology company. Most of our guys, actually 99% of our guys who are innovators, they have no business idea. They don't know what is a business model canvas. They don't know what is TAM or SOM or SAM. These are all financial numbers, which our leaders care about. The guys who are going to fund those ideas, they care about, right? So we give them those skills. We also change their mindset by bringing in the coaches who have launched startups in the past. And this just follow them through the program to help them, guide them in the right direction week over week. And finally, they get all the connections they need from the ecosystem. Typically, when you are in your comfortable environment, you tend to deflect things to other departments. But when they're out on their own, they are the owners of their idea. We actually call them the CEOs. Each team has a CEO, CMO, and CTO, and they are solely responsible for making progress from week to week. They cannot say, I asked the sales, or this team is doing this. No, it's your responsibility. We've been doing this for 3 years, and so you may want to know, does it work, right? I think it absolutely works. We have had more than 500 ideas come through, and we have accelerated 37 projects through our program, and we have made 8 commercialized products from these 37 projects that we accelerated. JD.com is it's a first Chinese smart speaker with a screen that came out of the program. It not only talks to you, it can also understand who is in front of the speaker and can personalize experience for you. This project, Genomics, it uses a special Intel processor to reduce the time it takes to sequence a human genome from 40 hours down to 2.5 hours. What it means is, today you go to a hospital, you get your blood test, you get your CT scan, but I think in the next few years, sequencing your genome would also be as common as running a blood test. And technologies like these make it happen. LifeSmart is the commercialization of that camera that opens the door looking at your face. So it's in the market now with a Chinese startup called LifeSmart. It's a smart home company. PC Farm is a pretty cool concept. If you have a large office, each desk has a desktop. What this idea does, it takes away all the desktop towers from everyone's desks and puts them in a separate room. Your desk is totally uncluttered. People cannot screw around with those computers. It's safe. You can protect the IP. AR Pool, I showed you. This is the first startup we spun out of Intel. We couldn't find a very good business within Intel, but the guy was super entrepreneurial. He wanted to still pursue the idea. So we helped him take all the IP he developed within Intel, have him go out and create his own startup. Robot navigation helped Xiaomi and a few other robot companies in China to navigate their way indoors. Thunderbolt, this is also interesting. This is a really good example of customer-driven innovation. Thunderbolt is very high-speed I/O. It's like USB, but it's like 100 times faster than USB. And it's an Intel technology. What it means is it's very difficult for small players to integrate it into their motherboards. Because, first of all, the design is not so simple. It needs to be certified. So small players are not able to offer this port. So a guy came up with an idea. He created a small board which comes pre-certified. All the guys, the small ODMs need to do is insert it onto their motherboard or solder it on their motherboard. So they don't have to go through all this pain of design and certification. Um, and they launched it at CES. Actually, that little product you see was launched at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. And the last is a data storage solution. Again, it's based on a special Intel chip. This guy was working in a department that was focused on network processing. What his job was, how to make internet traffic go faster on Intel's hardware. And while he was coding, he found out that he could use a similar code or tweak the code a little bit to compress huge amounts of data very fast. So this department is completely different. He was not able to convince his guys to invest in him, so he came to us. He created this technology, and today it's used to compress the genomics data. Because when you sequence a human genome, there are a lot of redundancies. It's a really good application for his technology. And again, we are working with BGI, that's the largest human genome sequencing company in the world. And all these are creating new revenue streams for Intel, new markets, new partners. But most importantly, it changes the culture in the company. It prepares our employees to tackle new challenges in a different way. To me, that's the biggest takeaway, but not necessarily, you cannot really quantify that. All you can do is like qualitative, what people say, what people think. It's very hard to quantify this. And we have tried in many different ways to quantify, like the employee retention, employee attraction. Really, you cannot really track it. It's very difficult, but I believe is the most important, is like, bringing about cultural change within your organization. So how do you create these entrepreneurs, right? People ask me this question, how can we create entrepreneurs within our companies? You cannot create entrepreneurs. You cannot. They have to be found. You need to find them in your organization, cannot create them. So how do you find them? What are they like? So I'm going to share with you 3 characteristics of these entrepreneurs. The first thing is that they are the dreamers who actually do. Right? Did you talk about this? See. Okay. So they realize, that innovation is 10% idea and 90% action. Ideas are worthless unless you put it into action and do something about it. So 6 years ago, when I came to Intel, right, I used to introduce myself. Hey, I came from Apple. The last project I did was iPad. And they're like, oh, we came up with the tablet first, even before. I'm like, what did you do with it? Right? Yeah, you might have had the idea, but you did nothing about it, right? So who actually brought tablets to the masses was Apple. So it's not about the idea. It's about taking the idea and putting your heart and soul into it and sweat into it, right? So you see them, real innovators will come to you with not just an idea, they'll come to you with the idea, what they have done about it, and show you something tangible. The second is they realize that you don't need to invent to be innovative. You can use something that exists and use it in a completely different area. That's where all the real innovations happen. Invention is necessary to create something new, but not all invention turns into innovation. The best examples of innovation happen when someone spots something in one place and uses it in a different place. And the third is that they might have a big vision. Like, for example, for the genome sequencing project, yeah, we want to cure cancer, but you have to start somewhere. Okay, what does it take? You need to be able to sequence someone's genome. It takes 40 hours today. How do we reduce that? Hey, we have something that can help. Let's try to write a code and see if it is possible. You create a proof of concept. You show it can work. You take a one step. Then you convince BGI or someone to try. Let us collaborate. And that's how you go to that big vision. You take small steps, right? You can't just sit there and say, hey, I want to do this. You actually have to do something. Take small steps towards that big vision. The next is that they are troublemakers, and they're very easy to spot. You want to take a picture? Okay. So they rather ask for forgiveness than ask for permission, right? So let's imagine that Jeff Raskin I talked about, the guy who came up with Macintosh. He didn't go to Steve Jobs and say, hey, can I create a new computer that's completely opposite to what you guys are doing? He would have been kicked out, right? So instead, what he did, he went and hired a few of his grad students. He used to teach art at, I think, University of either San Diego or somewhere else. And he hired a bunch of art students, and he brought a team together, and he just built it. And once he built it, then he showed to Steve Jobs. He did not ask, can I do it, right? So if you're actually asking for permission to do something, the default answer you'll get is no, right? And it's very hard to turn the no into a yes. You rather say sorry. You do something. If you get caught, you say sorry, right? If you're really innovating, I say be ready to get fired. You should always be ready to get fired. If people come to see what we do, I think if like an auditor comes in, they would find 15, 20 things we are doing wrong. But you need to take the risk. You need to do what's right. And the next is, again, from my time at Apple, Steve Jobs used to say this: if you're not breaking rules, you're not trying hard enough. Right? So I would not recommend you break rules, but try to bend those rules, try to push the boundaries, because if you're always playing by the rules, you will not discover anything new. And to innovate, you really need to find something new. The third thing is that you need to be multidisciplinary. You cannot. Real innovators they may be expert in one field, but they are also knowledgeable in other fields. They also need depth as well as breadth. And when I was growing up, I used to hear this phrase, "Jack of all trades, master of none." So when I was growing up, they would say, "Be really good at one thing and one thing only. Don't try to do a lot of things." And today, it could not be far from the truth, right? You need to be jack of all trades. You need to know what is blockchain, what is AI. It may not be related to your field. You might be in oil and gas, but you need to know all these things, at least at the surface level. If you're just like going deep in one direction, it's very hard for you to innovate. Other thing is that you cannot do it on your own. Right? You may be good at a technical guy, but you also need to sell your vision. So you need someone who can be a good marketer. You also need someone who is good at execution. So the very first day when we bring the innovators or the CEOs of our internal startups into our program, we give them 1 week to name their CEO, CTO, and CMO. Without these three guys, they cannot enter the program. We need these three key skills. Someone can say, I am the CTO as well as CMO. That's fine. But we need three names, like three throats to choke. But finally, it's one the CEO is responsible for. But we want them to get these three functions resourced for them to be successfully going through the entire program. And the last is you need to be able to sell your vision. No matter how great your idea is, if you're not able to sell, this idea won't get you anywhere. And that's one of the things we work towards, is how do we teach our engineers to sell their idea as a business. And that's the outcome of our acceleration program, is that the guys who used to talk about gigahertz and megahertz and number of ports, now they talk about the business impact, the customer segments, the traction partners, same language that the management can understand. So as the administrator of the program or like a leader in a company, all you need to do is enable these entrepreneurs to succeed. And that's the job of any program, right? Like your program at Amoeba. You just need to identify entrepreneurs, enable them to succeed, and just get out of their way. Right? So that's the best you can do for these guys. And I've been running this for 3 years, so I thought just yesterday, let me share some of the learnings from what I've been doing. I just did it yesterday, so it's not like super polished. It may look a little repetitive, maybe, but I thought I'll share it with you because when I was here last time, right? You guys asked a lot of questions about how to do things. How do you do this? And I also saw the questions come up, when you were on the stage earlier. So I thought of writing this 10 rules down so that it can help you actually get kick-started if you want to create such a program within your organizations. The first thing is don't do innovation theater. Who here knows what innovation theater is? So, a lot of times, this company say, hey, we need to be innovative. And then someone, like a CEO, appoints a chief innovation officer. And then he's like, then after a year, he says, show me what you're doing. So then what they'll do, there are two things that happen. They create an innovation center. They have ping pong tables, pool tables, sofas. And the CEO comes there. They see all this innovation center. And so the two things. So one is the innovation center. The second is startup programs. They create startup accelerator. So they will dangle a little carrot, attract the startups. And when the CEO or some executives come, they will put them in front of them. So these are two ways people show that they're innovative. Either they want to show it internally, or they also want to show their customers that they are innovative. But it doesn't work. It's just like this girl. She's like floating in air now, but in a second she will be down on the ground. So do innovation, really find a purpose about what you're doing it, why you're doing it, and do it for the right reason. Second is, you need to set SMART goals. And who knows SMART? It's like a general management term. It's like very specific goal, right? Which is measurable, which is actionable, realistic, and time-bound. And it's okay not to meet these goals. But you need a goal so that you know where to go. And you can always adjust the goals. You cannot be like, oh, we are innovating, I don't know what we are doing. But you need to have some sort of a goal. So when we were starting, we wanted to grow the program from 2 sites to 4 sites. We wanted to land at least one project in that year into a business unit to get productized. We didn't know whether we were going to meet any of these goals, but we were actually running towards those goals, right? You need to have SMART goals. Otherwise, I think it's just a management term. I just wanted to highlight because people think, hey, we are the innovation department. We have no real goals. We just, exist and we have fun. That's not the case. The second thing is you really need to measure what you're doing and publish your key performance indicators. Measuring does one thing. There's this phrase by Peter Drucker, right? He's a management guru. He says, what gets measured improves. There's another Peter Diamandis. He says, what gets measured and published improves exponentially. So all our KPIs are open for anyone to see. People outside, people inside. And people inside know exactly how much money we spend, how much revenues we brought in, and we keep updating it like quarter by quarter. So it's very transparent and open. If you don't meet it, you don't meet it. There are so many things out of your hands. But when you publish it, you are then really motivated to meet the guidelines. You're motivated to do better quarter over quarter. So try to be as open as you can. Be very honest about what you're doing. Rule number 4, get your finance guy on board. Because let me tell you, no matter what you do, everything you do has to go into the budget line. It has to be accounted for. And you may think you are smarter. You may think, hey, innovation is different. The normal rules don't apply. But in the end, someone has to cut the check for you, and it's the finance people. When we were actually trying to get the program off the ground, we got approval from our China CEO, and we were like, yay, let's go and do it. But our finance guy was like, no. Tell me ROI. Give me all these numbers. He gave me a spreadsheet. I couldn't understand anything, any term on that spreadsheet, what those meant. And it took us 3 months to get this guy on board. So you may think, I think it's difficult to quantify everything, but you still have to, you're a part of a bigger organizations, and they are not going to change all the financial spreadsheet for you. So you need to get ton. Your tangibles are easy, how much revenue you make, how much money you spend, but the intangibles, you can turn those intangibles into the real numbers if you have the finance guy on the board. They know the tricks. In the end, you can fudge any number on the spreadsheet, right? But when this analysis comes from finance, people believe them. When it comes from a guy who runs a program, they get questioned. So really get your finance guy on the board, get him to understand the value you create, then life is easier for you. This we found out maybe halfway through the program is you need to get out of the building. No matter how innovative you are, you might have a beautiful office, but you really need to get out there and see what's going on. Because if you're trying to be like entrepreneurs, you need to be amongst entrepreneurs, right? You need to get different kind of skill set, right? But more important is the mindset. When you see other real entrepreneurs struggling and the things they go through, you also get inspired to do things like them. So we actually did an experiment. Batch number 4, we ran that batch along with real startups. So we accelerated our internal startups along with real external startups. And that was one of the more successful batches that we have seen. And finally, you get connected with people who can do stuff for you which you never thought were possible. Next is you need to be able to tell your story. No matter how great you're doing, if you're not telling your story enough to the rest of the company, you will be, no one knows what you're doing, right? And telling the story does 3 things. It gives visibility for what you're doing. If the whole company is on board, if it's like a top-down thing, then it's easier. But for what I was doing, it was quite bottoms-up. This was the idea of creating ideas to reality came from bottom-up. So no one knew that such a thing exists. So it gives you visibility. It gives visibility to people. It also inspires other people to come and join. And if you don't have a good story to tell, you can start with a small success story, right? On the day one, you cannot have all the stuff I talked about, the millions of dollars in revenue, the number of projects. So the first 2-3 batches, we focus on 1 or 2 projects to really make them successful and really try to land them into a business unit. And that was our first success story with which we got more people on board. We also got a slot on Intel's official media account. WeChat is very popular in China, right? And in China, each organization can have an official account to communicate with the masses, and we were on that. We were publishing people's stories there. So it inspired our employees to come join the program. And when you tell the stories, a lot of opportunities open up. A lot of corporates are scared to tell what they do. They think my idea will be stolen. Nobody, it's if I have an idea, it's very hard for me to actually sell that idea to someone. Forget about them stealing. Even if I want to give it for free, no one wants them. It's not the idea like I mentioned, it's what you do with that idea that really matters. The next is if you're running a program like Intrapreneurship program, it's like going to war. And you're at war with people and processes, right? So you need to be ready to fight your battles. If you don't really believe in what you do, you will not fight as hard. I think this is the most fun part and most frustrating part of running ideas to reality for last 3 years is every new thing you want to do, people try to shoot it down. Processes come in the way. It's easy to give up. When we wanted to get into a co-working space, if you're a startup, you sign a form, next day you move in, and that's the end of the story. It took us 4 months to get into a co-working space. We have money, but there are like 10 different departments telling you why you cannot do it, right? There's a guy from HR. They're like, okay, so now they're going to be working from a different place. We're not sure if that's a good idea. The info security, what about if there's a data leak? The physical security. They're like, it's funny, they came to inspect the fire exits, they came to inspect the elevators, and then there's one guy who asked, what is your protocol if a fight breaks out? I've been living in Shanghai for 10 years. I have not seen anyone fight even in the bars. What, they definitely don't have a protocol to handle a fight breaking out inside an office. Fight. Yeah, not fire. Yeah, the fire, yeah. So they wanted the fire exits, and they wanted to make sure that the doors open outwards. There are so many things. But, it's easy to give up. But, if you have to do something, what I had to do then was I had to set up a weekly meeting with 10 different departments and tell them, don't come up with the problems, come up with solutions. Tell me what you want, I'll get it done. And so we started with a list of 50 things why we cannot do it, and over like 4 months, that went down to 0, and then we finally moved in. Process, that augmented reality pool, we wanted to have him spun out, right? So it's very simple. He's taking the code he created at Intel, going out, starting his own company. But just to do that, there's so many processes like HR, code scanning, legal, our venture capital arm. And it took us almost 6 months, and we now finally have a document that can be signed. But here's the thing, right? If you do it once, doing it the second time is much easier. And if you have done it here, someone else can do it somewhere else in the company. So you really need to fight these battles if that's the right thing for you to do. But again, it's very easy to give up and say, screw it, I will, why should I take all this trouble? So you really need someone who really believes in this. You cannot just get your best manager and ask him to manage this program. That won't work, because managers are really good at taking what is at their disposal and using it in the most optimal way. Next is, when you do this, you really need a really strong executive sponsor, right? I think Fauzan mentioned about it. Because when you're fighting all these battles, when you're breaking all these rules, someone needs to have your back. And so that's actually my manager who really, covers my back. And they do it in 3 ways, right? First is the air cover. So when you're fighting the battle on the ground, someone has to cover you from the top. That's one thing he does. Next way is he gives me a lot of leeway in what I do. I don't have to do every single thing I do. There are like 50 things I do, maybe like 40 things don't work. 10 things that work, I tell him. And finally, he gives you the confidence that you can actually go and break those rules and try to fight with those people. So you definitely need someone really high up who believes in you, who believes in this program. Next is that you need to be in control of your own destiny. Because when you are creating this innovation programs, everyone wants to have a part of it. At least that's what we face. Initially, we had a team of 15 people from all divisions, finance, HR, blah, blah, you name it, everyone was there. And there, everyone had voices on what to do, but only you are responsible to deliver the results, right? So you cannot make everyone happy. Today, we are just 2 people, who are directly responsible. Our performance is measured on what we do here. And so we get help from people, but we make our own decisions on how to run the program, what to do. And we work with the people who actually bring value. Because a lot of people it's very easy, when you're in a large corporate, you need to, at least like where I work, you need to show 3 things you've done this year. What are your 3 achievements? What are your 3 improvement areas, and something like that. So people will have they'll try to do many things. Are you in their top 3? If you're not in their top 3, there's no point working with those people, right? All they do is a lot of voice, no real action. And last is that it's all about people. It's not the money, not the process. It's the people. If the people don't innovate, if the people are not willing to spend extra time, and by the way, all the guys in our program, they do have their day jobs. What we do is we give them 1 day a week for this innovation, but it's not really 1 day. They actually spend maybe 2 days, 3 days. So actually they're working overtime to bring their ideas to reality. And they have to go through this 16-week program, and with lots of homework, lots of deliverables. And you really need these people to do it. Because if they say, okay, it's too much, I don't care, you can't do anything. You need to make sure that you take good care of these people. That's the most important thing. Carlos Brito is a CEO of AB InBev. They make beer. And you would think that the only sustainable competitive advantage might be the formula for the beer. But he calls that it's their people who is their only competitive sustainable advantage. I think a recap, no innovation theater, set goals that are measurable, measure and publish your goals or KPIs, the finance guy on board, get out of the building, tell your story, be ready to fight the wars, have a strong executive sponsor, be in control of your own destiny, and finally, remember it's all about the people. If you don't have the people, if you don't take care of the people, everything else doesn't matter. So, what do you think? Do you think you can make the gorilla dance? What do you think? Take a look. This guy I can make, but it's up to you, whether you really want to make your gorilla dance. With that, I'd like to end my talk. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you are WeChat users, you can scan the QR code, and it will take you to our official account, or you can find us at URL. Yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you very much.
Great sessions. Now Q&A time. So take out your mobile phone again, open your browser, and write paulf.com/chias. Okay, and then please start punching in the questions.
Can I sit on this?
Yeah, sure. Yes. Okay, so the question is already up. So let's just jump in to start answering the questions. Number 1, could you explain how to prioritize 500 plus ideas, become 37 projects, the craziest, the visionaries?
Okay. So there are 2 phases of the program. The one we call incubation, and one is acceleration. What I talked about today was acceleration. Incubation is very simple. We have like 10 different sites in China. Each site has a little technical committee. So if that committee believes that the idea has a technical merit, if they have funds locally, they will fund the idea. It's like seeding them, like $5K or $10K US to turn the idea on paper into something tangible. And so this goes on year round. The more focus of me is on the accelerator.
Okay.
And to get into the accelerator, they have to come up with a business plan that needs to explain. They need to first have a strategic fit with Intel, where Intel is going. If someone comes with an idea for a really cool material for shoe, probably will not fund that idea. They need to tell what pain point they're solving, how big is that pain point, why their solution has a competitive advantage, and why them, why it's your team, and show us what you've done to prove that your concept can actually work. So there are very few simple criteria we do to select from 500 and down to the 5 that we accelerate.
So they will not entertain all kinds of ideas, only ideas that related to Intel assets, strength?
Yeah, the ideas, so Intel has a few areas, like a strategic areas we want to go in, like, autonomous driving, drones, AI, AR, VR, 5G. So if it falls in these categories,
most likely it will be.
Yes, in the past we have, but actually, what we have seen is we are at batch 7 now. So in those 3 years, I think people already know what ideas get accepted, what kind of ideas don't get accepted. So I think the people have already, like, first 2 batches was a bit difficult, but now it's like people know what kind of ideas to submit. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So the second question is how to make top management trust that Troublemaker is a star and give them a chance to prove themselves. Interesting questions.
So, in the end, I think our management will see what happened with that idea, right? How did it end in the market? How much revenue they made? Which customer they got on board?
Right.
I think it's a real fact. They are not there day to day to see what kind of trouble this guy is creating or what kind of cool stuff he's working on. They see the end result. If let's say our China CEO is talking to, like, let's say, like, CEO of, like, Alibaba or Ali Cloud, and he mentions about this project, then it really makes an imprint on him, right? So in the end, I think, yes, you need to lay all the groundwork, you need to do all the hard stuff, but in the end, the top management sees the results. And that's why I was saying is that you really need to set the goals, you really need to track your KPIs, because all you do, maybe at my level, I feel great, okay, this guy is awesome, this guy is super innovative, but the management only sees the results, right? We are a public company. In the end, the way the company performs is determined by Wall Street. Wall Street sees results. So you need to show how you are contributing to the bigger company results. And it's a really hard fact I learned over these 3 years.
Maybe the idea of the question is this, like, when somebody has been labeled as troublemakers in the company, and then he came with an idea, present an idea, and everybody starts thinking, oh, come on, that guy is just going to mess things up, and nobody trusts that person, and then there's no way for that idea to actually come into reality. Man, how do you make sure that the necessary troublemakers actually have a chance?
Okay, so that's where, that's where a program like us helps, because there's some times that, also there's another thing, there's one rule, which was be in control of your own destiny, right? So what we do is, in every batch we select, we have 1 or 2 which we think we can actually land into the market. But there are also 1 or 2 which are, like, super crazy, which has maybe 5% chance of succeeding. But if it succeeds, it would be something really cool. So we kind of modulate what kind of ideas we want to let in, and it's, in the end, it's my job to convince the management. Actually, I think it's pretty flat. So me and, like, my manager, we decide what ideas go into the batch, and we say, okay, this 3 we sure we can land somewhere. This 2 we are not sure. So I think we kind of self-modulate, what kind of ideas we want to let in. Yeah.
Okay, so the question is about measurement. Please share how your accelerator team measure the impact in innovation team. It's not there.
No, it's not there. Well, how do you measure what? Please share how accelerator
measure their impact in innovation team.
Okay, so I don't get this question actually. How do you measure? Whose question was this? You can maybe.
Okay, it's changing again. What was it?
Please share how your accelerator team measure their impact. Also, measure our impact. I think it's very simple. Actually, just this like weekend, my manager sent like a communication out about how this program is impacting Intel, and he had only two categories. First category, he was talking about how much revenues we brought in for the company.
Right.
He named a couple of projects that have the potential to be super big, like $1 billion. And next is he talked about how it's impacting the culture of the organization. So these are the three things he talked about how we are making an impact on Intel's revenues and culture. So these are the two areas we measure. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Tell us more about your experience on how to get the executive on board on the program as sponsor or other roles.
So in my case, the senior executive in China, or like Intel China CEO, he wanted to create. I think he saw a lot of little innovations happening in China, and we have pretty big workforce. We have about 9,000 people, and worldwide we have like 100,000. So like 10% of our whole company was in China, and a lot of little innovations were happening, but none of those were turning into like commercial products. And so he created this position to streamline the effort. So that was like from top down, he had this thing in mind that we have to do something. But what the solution I had, like they had no clue what an accelerator is. Okay. They had no clue about what is intrapreneurship. So these were the things I had to get my boss on board, right? So a lot of times what you need to find out is the top sponsor, who does he listen to, right? Because you need to, before you go to him, you need to get his deputies also on board.
Okay.
So that's also something I learned, is that a guy will always like default to his deputies, like, what do you think? What do you think? So when you go into a meeting with a big proposal, it really helps if his direct staff also supports your proposal. So you need to do a lot of groundwork in getting those guys on board
first.
Also, you need to know whose opinion he considers more valuable. This is also like, I learned from my manager. And I was super lucky to have my manager because he really knows the Intel's culture super well. He used to be the assistant of the Intel's number 2 for a long time before he came into this role. So his role is, he's a VP of corporate strategy. And before that, so he knew how the top leadership of Intel works. He knew all the politics. And when he came to China, his new boss was Intel China CEO. So he knew whose opinion that guy considers most valuable. So we were strategically getting and what do you call it, get those people on board, like, getting them on board so that when we go into this meeting, they would be like, yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah.
Right.
So it's not easy. It's not a one-time thing. It's just like a startup, right? When the startup goes out, they pitch their idea. They pitch the same idea, same pitch, hundreds of times. And it's the same thing inside a corporate as well. You need to tell the same story multiple times to different people in different ways based on what they care about, and always show them how what you plan to do is going to help them achieve their top goals.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned earlier in your presentations that 99% of the people joining your program are engineers.
Yes.
Right. So this is, I think, represent those people. It says here, I'm just appointed to be in charge of a company innovation program. It is a big career shift, and I have no experience at all in technical matters. What is your advice for me to succeed in this new role?
So he has no expertise in technical
Yes, I think so. So it's the reverse of your
Yeah,
situations.
so there are two kinds, of innovations that are happening. One is you have a technology, like what's in our case,
Yes.
and you're trying to find the use for that technology. The second kind of innovations are happening, which comes from the business side, right? So they're in a business and they're like, okay, I believe, let's say you're in, I keep coming to oil and gas industry. So let's say oil industry. They're like, okay, there's a lot of wastage happening in the pipes. So it would be good if you could have sensors and like spread along the pipeline. So I think, but if you're not technical, what you need to do is I think you need to basically research on what people are doing in these areas. Just start with a Google search. Start with your local ecosystem. Start being active in those areas. For example, if you think, let's say some kind of maybe artificial intelligence kind of technology could help you, try to go to like the accelerators that do that.
Okay.
I think basically you just need to do some ground research and maybe get people on board who can understand that, who can help you figure out what technologies are out there.
But you don't have to be like the expert
You don't need
in
to
terms
be
of technical.
No, you don't need to. I think I think you need to be able to understand like just like surface level to see if that technology is. Because I'll tell you, okay, I'm a mechanical engineer by training. When I came to Intel, I didn't know how a chip worked.
Right.
I didn't know how to design a motherboard, and my role was chief architect of designing all these things.
Okay.
So all I did was I just kept reading different books, reading articles, reading resources available, and asking questions from my employees. I don't think you need to be super deep as long as you can understand simple basics.
So when you said earlier about breadth and depth, so how does that relate to this guy's experience?
Yeah. So for example, my depth is mechanical engineering, right? But if I'm in a role where I'm responsible to design, like say, entire tablet,
Okay.
I need to know how a chip works at a very high level. What are the different components of a motherboard? You'll have a central processor. You will have a communications chip. You will have antennas. There is something called electromagnetic interference that you need to protect. So that, for example, if this has like a little board and processor, right? It will emit waves, and if I don't have a way to contain the waves, it will harm me. So I think then there's like plastics. I think you just have to read about every single thing, and just enough that you can at least understand what people are talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do we know that our idea is worthy of being a masterpiece?
An idea. I think, again, like I said, idea, you have to act on the idea. The first thing is you have an idea, do something about it, right? Maybe make a cardboard mock-up, show to people, ask people, get their feedback. That's the lean startup way. You will not know. In your mind, you just have an assumption that this is a masterpiece, but you are not the one to decide, right? So what you decide what are the three things that are super critical for this idea to work, and try to validate if it is true. Right? And that's how you go through this like lean startup process. And you don't actually need to go to the customer, show it to your colleagues. Say, hey, what do you think of this?
Right.
And a lot of times, the way to move your idea forward is not to say, hey, Indravan, I need $10 from you to do this. Maybe that's not the wrong way. You say, hey, this is an idea. What do you think about this?
Right.
Would you be interested in collaborating?
Right.
Don't ask, don't ask for resources. Ask for opinion, ask for advice, and then people will actually, if they like it, they will offer something.
So it is impossible to know in the beginning that an idea is a masterpiece. You have to sort of test it on the market, see it, and then it might evolve into something completely different from the original ideas.
Exactly.
And then you come up with a masterpiece.
Yeah, so like last year, when I was talking about the iPhone, I think you guys, none of you guys were there, but when we were creating, actually, we were not even creating iPhone at that time. We were creating an input device which was touch. And we worked on it for a few years, and it turned into iPhone. No, it turned into a tablet. The tablet didn't go anywhere, and then it turned into an iPhone, right? So, when we were starting, we were not like, hey, we are going to make iPhone. We didn't even know what an iPhone could be, right? But we liked this idea of touch, and we ran with that idea. We tried to do really cool applications from that, which turned into a tablet. But then we couldn't find a way to productize tablet. At the same time, there was a team working on the phone, so we gave the touch to the phone, and that became iPhone.
Yep.
And then the tablet came out 5 years later. Right?
So the masterpiece actually comes out later.
Yeah.
Not in the beginning.
No. So actually, the masterpiece you had in mind became someone else's baby, right? So it became iPhone. So yeah, I think this, you just have to take the idea and take action on it, because today you might think this is the masterpiece. As you start working on it, you might think it's the stupidest idea, or you might come up with a bigger masterpiece along the way. The key is to act on it. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So Intel is known for its R&D, right? So the question is this: what is the difference between innovation center and traditional form of R&D center?
Okay. So R&D. So at least the way it is, first of all, we don't have an innovation center. Okay. I think I am the only guy in the company who is 100% dedicated to this innovation. Okay, but actually, this word innovation is kind of frowned upon in our company. They think it's something fake, or not fake, but everyone innovates.
Okay.
Everyone makes some. Everyone actually innovates on a day-to-day basis, and so the way R&D works is like people will look at technology, and they will say, how can we better this technology? What other technologies are out there? For example, right now there are people working on quantum computing, right?
Yep.
And they're working on 5G communications. It's super technical terms, but someone has to translate what it means for normal people, what it means to, let's say, Microsoft, what it means to Dell, what it means to whoever, So that's the part. So R&D is good. R&D department is good at working on technology, creating maybe what the next product would be.
Right.
But then the job of the innovation guy is to figure out, how do I take that technology, take that product, and make it useful to the people, or your customers, or users.
Okay.
I know, I think there's no real clear definition of innovation, and people all have all different ways. I think innovation center is like a recent phenomenon, where people are creating this workspaces that have sofas and, the ping pong tables and beer and stuff. But you don't need that to really, innovate.
Is it safe to say that R&D is more focused on technological aspect, and
so.
innovation center is more solving people's problem?
Yes, yeah, you can say that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. How would you set the awards for those who deliver ideas and proceed with the projects? Awards, yes.
A lot of people think that people, these guys need some sort of like a monetary compensation. It's like totally far from the truth. No one actually has asked us, hey, give me like. Actually, they don't care. What they need is this: they want recognition, they want to be heard, they want to be recognized for their ideas, and no one actually really cares about money. There are many times during our acceleration process we'll say, hey, do you actually want to go out and start your own company? You'll be able to make much more money from this. And they're like, no, what I want to do is I want to see this idea become a product at Intel, and then I can go on to the next thing. So it depends on the kind of people you have. Maybe some companies, I think it comes from, who these people are, right? So for us, our people are super technical. For them, maybe they can say that, hey, my technology is into like 100 million devices, I enable that. But someone, maybe he's more like a let's say like an MBA type, or maybe more entrepreneur type, real entrepreneur type. He wants to build his own business with his own money, but it looks like we don't attract those kind of people to our companies, right? So people are not. All they need is recognition, and the way they get recognition is whenever a new batch is selected, we will release our WeChat story about who these people are, what they do. Even like in our the company, we have a wall of fame. Their posters will be there for those 6 months, so everyone knows what they're doing. Their friends know what they're doing, and whenever there's a success, we will also release a story on this guy. So I think they get enough recognition inside as well as outside, and it also helps them climb the corporate ladder. So once someone has gone through this program, they kind of have a badge of honor or have a bragging rights to say, hey, I've been through this program. I'm not just a technical guy. I also have business skills. I am more entrepreneurial now.
Right.
I know what it takes to run a business. And so they naturally climb the ladder as well.
And for those companies who wants to start innovation programs, such as Idea to Reality, for example, which department or directorate you think should initiate the program, own the program?
So yeah, so that was very, it's funny. So this was a corporate strategy. So I'm a part of corporate strategy. And so we have no department. It's like completely like corporate wide.
Yes.
And I think that's the reason it works.
Right.
Right. So if you, in the end, right, see who pays your bill. Right? So it's funny, So the money for our program comes from corporate strategy, okay? But the benefits are reaped by all the business units. And each business unit has their own P&L. So we could actually go in and say, hey, why don't you all contribute to the program? But then maybe it doesn't work. Those guys will say, hey, I have like a bigger projects, I can make more revenue, and you are so small, right? But they don't recognize the people impact. There's so many other impacts, the org health, culture, upskilling the employees. They think it's HR's business, but HR doesn't have like a money to put into the program. So I don't know, there's not the right answer. You just need to see who cares the most about developing your people. Sometimes, some companies, they have, let's say, I know a few like Honeywell, I know like J&J. They have like services division. What they do is they provide services to other departments, like digital services, some other services, and usually the innovation resides within them.
Okay.
But I don't know. It's like a very specific to your structure of your company.
Right. Last questions. What are the major challenges you faced, and how do you solve them?
I think one of the things, is we want to. It's funny. Okay, so this program has been existing 3 years, but for some reason, people don't want us to make too much noise about it. With the headquarters. And at the same time, we need to keep the employees motivated. My biggest challenge is how to grow the program to the next stage. We are in China now. We are bringing in, accelerating around like 10 to 15 projects a year. How do we go bigger? How do you make it a part of the corporate culture in the headquarters? And we are like now, I think it takes time to get people to believe in you. Because I think now I see more pull from my management about what we do, how we do it, how do you go to the next level. But for the first 2 years, it felt like no one cared. But I may be wrong. It's just my feeling, you know. But they were still, you know, paying for the program, right? Because we're showing them enough value. But my problem was, how do I get all the different business units to say, you know, I want to run my project through your program. And it has happened in the past now. So there is one business unit that regularly brings 2 to 3 projects through our program every batch. And they see the value in it. But it takes time. So what you need to do is, you know, there's 2 ways. One thing is you push, and other way is someone pulls. You know, I want people pulling, then it has a more chance of succeeding rather than me pushing. And it's slowly happening. It has been, for me, it has been a lot of frustration that no one is like really pulling, but it's happening in the last 6 months, within last 1 year, and now more people are like, you know, saying, yes, you know, this program helped my business unit, and we couldn't do this project. For example, the JD.com, the speaker, that business unit benefited from it, and now that business unit brings many more innovative ideas. So what I want to do is, if a business unit has an idea that they're not really sure about the business model, they want to de-risk their investments, they run it through our program, and we'll find the right end for them. For example, we'll find a validated business case for them, or we'll tell them there is no market for it. And I want the business units to come to us, and it's happening now. You know, it's happening slowly. And I think the key guy there was my manager. Now he starts to believe in what we do, and he's been an advocate. But it took a long time for that to happen.
Okay.
So I think you just need to be patient. There are lots of ups and downs. There are times when I said, screw it, I'm going somewhere no one cares. But, you know, I think it's the people, you know, as long as there are people coming, I will keep doing it. But now people are now pulling from different, they're like, hey, there's actually, I had a call with a guy from the headquarters. They suddenly woke up and realized that there are more business models than just selling your processor.
Yep.
Because usually what we do is we sell our processors and everything else we give for free. All the software we develop on top just to sell our processor, but actually you can earn a lot of value from what we're creating. And so they're like, you know, hey, we are thinking of new business models, and we would like to run a few ideas through your program. And I think it's happening, but it takes time, lots of frustrations.
Patience is the keyword.
So you need to have passion.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And Mr. Token for appreciations. Please again, round of applause for Kapil Kane. Thank you very much. Very inspiring. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you for the second time.
Oh, it's my pleasure. You know.